It has been a momentous day, not just for the Middle East, but for the UK as well. I'll tell you why in just a moment. But what has unfolded over the past 24 hours confirms an epic global shift towards peace. It confirms that President Trump, much to the annoyance of his haters, has been the architect of this new era.
And after so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity.
That was, of course, earlier today, where President Trump declared a historic dawn of a new Middle East, stating the war is over. Even the most sceptical Trump haters would have been moved by tearful, heart-wrenching reunions of the last 20 surviving hostages held by Hamas, their families overwhelmed by the emotion of holding their loved ones again. And remember this. This couple were torn apart. They were nicknamed Romeo and Juliet for this moment. Well, today they, amongst others, were reunited. There isn't a dry eye here in the studio, let me tell you. But beyond those beautiful moments begins a major chapter which will affect the United Kingdom. At a time when it feels like we are always at the back of the queue, doesn't it? This crisis arrived instantly onto our streets. Local MPs were elected on Gaza. Protests escalated every week. An assassination at a Manchester synagogue. People who happen to look Middle Eastern reporting aggression. And anybody not on those two sides, frankly, irritated by the attention that it all receives. Well, now the UK has something we haven't had in years. Breathing space to take stock and get our priorities in order. We imported anger and division from the Middle East, and now it's time to work out what our country wants. Any potential economic benefits, oil markets have steadied already. Good news for British families heading into the winter. A stable Middle East means more stock market certainty, potentially lower petrol prices. Unfortunately, despite clocking up more air miles than an Instagram travel vlogger, Keir Starmer is not a key player on the global stage. We should have a great opportunity here, an obligation even, as the UK, to take on a constructive role and have a slice of the profits that will be generated by the rebuilding of that region. But we've been sidelined, with the US, Qatar and Egypt taking a lead on negotiations. We have deep historical ties in this region. We should now reassert ourselves, shouldn't we, as a mediator, a partner in rebuilding Gaza? But do you think this government are up to the job? There's one more dimension we must discuss tonight: illegal migration. Conflict in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan and most recently Gaza have all contributed to the sharp rise in asylum claims and displaced lives. Channel crossings, remember, surged by over 60% during periods of heightened violence in Gaza and Lebanon last year. The British public has grown weary of a broken asylum system that cannot distinguish between the genuinely persecuted and those exploiting chaos for financial gain. The instability in the Middle East has given cover to both. Not anymore. This should stabilise populations, allow people to rebuild where they are, not flee to where they are not welcome. Because when bombs stop falling, families stop fleeing. When economies rebuild, smugglers lose business. Starmer will claim credit for falling migration numbers or blame success on the threat of digital ID. But will you buy it? Well, tonight the world must thank President Donald Trump and his team for his success. It is a turning point for the region, for America, and yes, for Britain too. Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say this evening. So let's now say a proper hello to my panel, Executive Director at Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dozier. Evening, Tim.
Good evening.
And former Obama Policy Advisor, Laurie Watkins. Good evening, Laurie. So great to meet you both. Right, first of all then, Laurie, as I presume you're not a Trump fan, how does it feel tonight? Is it tricky for people who've been criticising him for years?
Oh, let's not start off on that. It's not that I'm not a Trump fan. I think I will give credit where credit is due. I focus a lot on the Middle East. What has been achieved is tremendous. It is monumental. I hope that it does bring peace to the region. There is more stability for all the reasons that you just gave in your opener. And so this is a day to celebrate this deal. It's more importantly time to celebrate these hostages being returned to their families and out of captivity. And I just think it's a great day. Now, the devil is in the details of this peace plan, so that hasn't been released yet, except for a very short list. So I'm very interested to see what that's going to look like. But yeah,
do you credit
where the rubber meets the road?
Do you credit President Trump with it?
Absolutely, full stop.
Yeah. Tim.
Yeah, it's hope. That's the word that as I watch this incredible footage, I see hope.
Yeah.
I see that there is a chance to make something wrong right after so many, I think 80,000 rockets have been fired since October 7th, 2023, something like that. You have these prisoners, 2,000 prisoners on the Palestine side. You have the hostages that were released today. It is something that is so remarkable, and it also speaks to moral clarity. This got done because President Trump did not waver. Even when the UK, even when France, even when all of our allies in Europe said, no, we need to bow to this. We need to make Palestine a state. President Trump said, we're not going there. We want the hostages back. We want this war to end. We want the blood to stop before we even talk about anything else. And you know what? They bent, and he won. Okay,
thank you, guys. Let's go now to speak to a man that I have been desperate to talk to all day, actually, and been desperate to talk to him since news of this peace resolution was sorted, which is the legendary broadcaster Maajid Nawaz. Because Maajid, good evening. You were in the studio with me here in DC. You were going to the White House, and 24 hours later, we had a peace deal. Can you take some credit for this, my friend?
I can't be that bold on air to be taking any credit for anything, Bev, but it's fantastic news. I agree with your guests. It is a historic day. Of course, here in London, where I'm speaking to you from, some of those who were the ceasefire now crowd, who were demanding an immediate stop to the war and a ceasefire, now that that's been achieved, are somewhat either silent or negative about these developments. It's all very strange. They wanted to stop the war. The war has now stopped. Hamas has declared an end to the war and thanked President Trump for ending it. And these guys here on these protests are saying that this is not an end to the war. It's simply a pause, and we must fight on until we annihilate and end the state of Israel, which isn't what peace is about. And I'm not sure, last time I checked, peace didn't mean war and war didn't mean peace.
Maajid, since the 60s, we've had some of the best lawyers, military experts, global leaders in the world trying to sort this out. How did Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner and Donald Trump, basically men who build golf courses and apartment blocks, manage to sort this out? How?
Well, for those of us who've been following the situation, first of all, let me say that the Abraham Accords that President Trump achieved in his first term, 5 years ago from September the 15th, this has been a long time in the planning. What Trump did, and is part of the genius of not necessarily just the man Trump, but the policy of those who backed him in his first term and through into this term as well, is that they completely changed the dynamic of what this problem, how it was perceived in the Middle East. The flaw that a lot of Middle East policy wants, but mainly, especially the politicians, the flaw with which they approached this situation was that this was a bilateral conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. And in some instances, if you're Keir Starmer, suddenly they made it a unilateral issue by simply declaring recognition for a Palestinian state. The truth is, as Trump's peace plan now demonstrates, that this was all along, Bev, a regional problem. Trump's innovative approach was to address it as a regional problem, to speak directly to the powers in the region that were backing Hamas, for example, such as Iran and other regional players, speaking directly to the Saudis, to the Turks, to the Egyptians, to the Pakistanis even, a nuclear power, the Muslim world's only nuclear power, to say, listen, all of you are involved. We all need to get together to solve this regionally. And that's the culmination of what we just saw in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And that was that the Gaza Peace Declaration has been signed by Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Egypt. Turkey is a NATO member, a military power. They're guaranteeing security, peace, and prosperity now in the Middle East. We've also got the Indonesian president, the leader of the most populous Muslim nation, now on his way to visit Israel. It's truly unprecedented, Bev, and the reason this has all been made possible is because we changed the paradigm and approached it regionally.
And I made light of the fact that they're property developers, but I do wonder whether there is something important in that, because Trump has effectively come at this by saying you don't negotiate peace, you build peace in a metaphorical sense. But he's also offered the temptation of literally building the area into a successful hub in the Middle East. How appealing to the invested parties in that region was that attitude, Maajid? Because I'd never heard anybody look at that region and say, you can all be rich. Not just the oil barons, you can all have a slice of this.
Well, this was, if you go back to, he was mocked for it at the time, Bev, the whole Riviera notion. But actually, this is what he was doing, because now in Gaza, it's not actually Palantir or the Israelis that are in for rebuilding Gaza. Actually, the truth is, the Saudis have pledged the money, and you're going to again have those Emirati and Gulf financiers backing the regeneration of Gaza with transitionally a UN peacekeeping force, but essentially Muslim peacekeepers on the ground. So whether that results in a two-state solution or any other regional solution to the issue, the redevelopment of Gaza will be funded by Gulf Arabs. And so if you can, and this is part of Jared Kushner's approach to this question, if you can motivate them by personal interest and profit, as well as the morality of, we need peace, we need a better world, then you see what we ended up with, which was the regional players getting involved and working with Trump on it instead of antagonizing his peace approaches.
Yeah, okay, well, Maajid, you may not take any credit for it, being the founder of the Accordists, for flying in and suddenly we have a peace deal, but there's a little part of me that thinks that you had something to do with this, Maajid Nawaz. Whatever you do, anyway, keep doing what you're doing, because it is amazing. You are the voice of reason. You are the oracle. You want to know what's around the corner? Follow Maajid Nawaz on his socials and he'll tell you everything. Thank you so much for staying up late to join me this evening. So good to see you. Right, let me know your thoughts this evening, everybody at home, won't you? gbnews.com/your say.